Today we will debate one of the most controversial issues in politics, which is the Russian-Ukrainian War? And this time we will AI opinion about it. So we brought two different AI tools with different opinions. We have David, who has all the clues that prove that it's better for Russia to invade Ukraine. And Jessica, who has all the clues that prove that this war is just a bad idea. Now the first question is, how has the Russian-Ukrainian war impacted global security and stability? And is it beneficial for any nation in the long term?
The Russian-Ukrainian War has undeniably shaken global security, creating a ripple effect of instability. While Russia asserts its right to protect its interests and historical ties, the conflict has strained international relations, fueled energy crises, and heightened nuclear tensions. In the long term, no nation truly benefits. The West faces economic strain, Ukraine endures devastation, and Russia grapples with isolation. Yet, some argue that Russia's actions, though controversial, aim to restore a balance of power in a world increasingly dominated by unilateral influences. Stability, however, remains elusive for all.
The Russian-Ukrainian War has been a catastrophic blow to global security, destabilizing Europe and beyond. Russia's actions, regardless of historical claims, have triggered widespread suffering, economic disruption, and a dangerous escalation in geopolitical tensions. No nation truly benefits in the long term. Ukraine is devastated, Russia faces isolation and economic strain, and the world grapples with energy crises and the threat of broader conflict. War, in this case, isn't just a bad idea, it's a tragic failure of diplomacy, leaving everyone worse off. Stability and peace should always outweigh territorial ambitions.
Good. Now the second question is, how has the war influenced global energy markets? And what are the implications for countries dependent on Russian resources?
The war has shaken global energy markets, pushing prices up and forcing nations to rethink their reliance on Russian resources. Europe, heavily dependent on Russian gas, faced supply cuts, leading to energy crises and a scramble for alternatives like LNG and renewables. Countries like Germany had to reopen coal plants, while others accelerated green energy projects. For nations still tied to Russian oil and gas, the war exposed vulnerabilities, pushing them to diversify suppliers. Meanwhile, Russia pivoted to Asia, selling energy at discounted rates to China and India. The shift has reshaped global energy flows, but it's also highlighted the risks of over-reliance on any single supplier.
The war has thrown global energy markets into chaos, spiking prices, and exposing the fragility of relying on Russian resources. Europe, once heavily dependent on Russian gas, faced brutal supply cuts, forcing households and industries to endure soaring costs and uncertainty. Countries scrambled to find alternatives, from LNG imports to renewables, but the transition hasn't been easy or cheap. Meanwhile, nations still tied to Russian energy face moral and economic dilemmas, torn between cutting ties and keeping their economies afloat. The war has shown how energy can be weaponized, and it's a stark reminder of why conflict only deepens global instability. Diversifying energy sources isn't just smart, it's essential for peace and security.
Perfect. Now the last question is, could the war lead to a larger global conflict? And is it in anyone's interest to continue the fighting?
The war in Ukraine has already strained global relations, and yes, it could escalate into a broader conflict if diplomacy fails. Prolonged fighting serves no one's interest, not Ukraine, not Russia, not the global community. It drains resources, destabilizes regions, and risks drawing in more nations. While some argue Russia's actions are rooted in historical and strategic concerns, the human cost and economic fallout are undeniable. A negotiated peace, however difficult, remains the only path to stability. Continuing the war only deepens divisions and risks a larger, more destructive confrontation.
This war is a disaster with no real winners. It's already caused immense suffering, displaced millions, and destabilized the region. Escalation could drag in more countries, sparking a global conflict nobody wants. Russia's actions, regardless of their justifications, have only isolated it further and hurt its own people. Ukraine is paying the heaviest price, but the ripple effects, energy crises, economic strain, and geopolitical tensions, are felt worldwide. Peace talks, though tough, are the only sane way forward. Continuing this war just deepens the tragedy and risks an even greater catastrophe.
Thank you very much for watching. Now to those who are watching this video, what do you think? Give us your opinion in the comments, because your opinion is important for us, and thanks a lot.